What do you say, everybody? It's time for Monday Night Quarterback. We're doing it here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel, and we are presented by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Welcome to our show tonight with Clint Lamb. We got Joseph Hastings. We got Jimmy Stein. I'm Mick Gillispie. Before we talk Alabama and everything going on with the Crimson Tide, do me a solid. Like and subscribe. Give me a thumbs up. That's a way of saying roll tide. Hit the bell. That's so that you know when we're live and we got a show going on. And don't forget right now, this special, I'm telling you right now, because you're going to regret it if you don't take advantage of it, $1 for a year of On 3. Bama On 3, BamaInsider On 3. It's a great deal. All you got to do is go to BamaInsider.com and sign up there. All right, let's bring him on. Here's our beat man letting us know everything going on around the world of the Crimson Tide. His name is Clint Lamb. You guys know him from our show, Monday Night QB. What is going on, my brother?
Not much, Mick. Are you still panicking 48 hours later? Is the world coming to an end for Alabama?
Yeah, look, I never panicked. I mean, Chris was at my house watching the game. He'll tell you, I didn't panic. I knew that it was going to be a tough game going in. I was glad Alabama won, but remember, I'm the guy that took Texas in the 20 points. I remember last year, just take it from a guy that, might drop a few bucks down every once in a while on a game. This spread never made sense to me. Alabama struggled against Auburn. Alabama struggled against Florida to put them away. They lost to Texas A&M last year. But I got to tell you, it's one thing to play a close game with Alabama. It's an entirely different thing to beat the Crimson Tide. So I think this could turn out to be a good thing, Clint.
I think so too. And we talked about it a little bit in the postgame show, but it just Texas A&M went down, right? Notre Dame went down to Marshall. Like a lot of times teams end up beating teams they shouldn't beat. And Alabama, to their credit, A&M had a lot of talent. You got to have a lot of talent to beat Alabama, or they did last year at least. I still think they got talent, but maybe they haven't quite figured it all out this year either. A lot of teams haven't. I mean, not everybody. Georgia looks good, and I think maybe them replacing as much as they did and still looking that good, especially on defense, that has some people concerned that if they can do it, why can't we do it? Well, I mean, a lot of teams out there are still figuring some stuff out. I don't know if anybody watched Ohio State's offense in week 1. But it was supposed to be the offensive equivalent to Alabama's defense, and it was, it didn't look great at all. And it's looking a lot better as the weeks or games go on. But, yeah, it's just part of it, man. I think Alabama's going to be fine, but there's certainly some things to work on.
Well, look, I mean, before we start kind of breaking down some of the individual players, let me ask you this. How many advantages could Texas have over Alabama? The time was an advantage. The stadium was an advantage. The weather was an advantage. It just seemed like the officials were an advantage. The home crowd was an advantage. I mean, like if you were going on your PlayStation or your Xbox and you were saying, okay, I want to make it really tough for a team to go play, everything that was kind of thrown into the pot, a coach that used to coach with you that knows everything you want to do. And honestly, look, they won the football game. I think that's what you go there for.
Yeah. I don't think enough people are talking about this, but I want to say that Alabama's first drive was, I think, like 11 plays. They went close to 60 yards, and they took about just over 6 minutes off the clock, and then they kick a field goal. From that point forward, Texas went on a 14-play, 67-yard drive or something similar. They took almost 6 minutes off the clock. They gave their defense plenty of rest. What does Alabama do on their next drive? It's a one-play, 81-yard touchdown by Jace McClellan, and then the defense is right back out there. That's the negative to scoring very quickly. You got that Texas heat. They had just been out there for a really long period of time. Then you follow it up with a very quick score on the offensive end. That's even worse than going 3 and out. It was one play instead of 3. Now your defense is right back out there, and Texas had, I think, like a 6-play, 75-yard touchdown drive that took about, I think, 3 minutes. So within the first – after that first drive for Alabama, the defense was out there for almost 20 straight plays and almost 10 minutes of clock. I think that set the tone for it kind of being pretty much a rough day on the defensive side of the football, because you would have to think they'd be, fatigued. So it's just the way the game ended up working out. You certainly don't want to avoid scoring. So it's not like Jace McClellan did anything wrong, but I think, and then from that point forward, there was a bunch of punts back and forth. And so that helped a little bit. But when you've got, you're out there for 20 straight plays pretty much, and you're grinding in that Texas heat that early in the game, you're already going to be fatigued, half a quarter in.
Good to see all you guys hanging out in the comments section. Big Buck, I see you, Jarvis, Danko. Thank you guys for the comments. Love reading them. Look, Alabama's going to be really motivated to get ready for the next big test, which will be Arkansas in 3 weeks. But Alabama plays Louisiana Monroe this Saturday. Let's talk about individual players. There's been a lot of questions as to how Alabama utilized Jahmyr Gibbs last game.
Yeah, and it was very interesting. And it's kind of, we saw it coming in a lot of ways. We knew that he was going to be more involved in the passing game because he only had that one catch for 5 yards against Utah State. I was like, there's no way they brought this cat in, to have that kind of usage, in that facet of, the passing game. 9 catches for 74 yards, wasn't quite expecting that. But at the same time, he was a very effective player. He was reliable. And so, of course, Alabama's going to utilize him in that way. Now, granted, he wasn't super effective on the ground. I think only like 9 carries. 9 carries for 22 yards. Didn't have a great performance on the ground. I think that was a lot of factors involved. But I also think that you need to mention, the struggles in pass protection, because I found it interesting that, he had a couple of mishaps, and you've got the one that everybody's talking about that was shown on the replay of the broadcast, but then there was a couple of others where he didn't look great in pass protection. And next thing you know, he's splitting out wide quite a bit, and they got Jace McClellan back there. And they did that for quite a while. And that's an effective duo, getting both those guys on the field at the same time. We talked about it in the preseason. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But when you look, Jahmyr Gibbs, he hadn't done a whole lot of pass protection, right? Because, over the last 2 years prior to 2022, Georgia Tech had maybe thrown the football, I think it was 625 times. Alabama had 571 pass attempts total in just 2021 alone. Over the last 2 years, they're close to 1,000. So they're sitting up there closing in on double that. And so there just hadn't been as many opportunities for him to pass protect. And when you've got a guy like that, a dynamic receiving threat, are you really going to have him in pass protection a ton? Or if it's an obvious passing situation, are you going to have him running around? So he just is not very experienced with it. And I think that that's a huge area that he needs to improve. So, I think that was, something to note, but just putting that on tape that he has the ability to be such a dynamic receiver out of the backfield, which we already knew, but just seeing it and seeing how they can move him around and stuff, I think he's going to be an excellent chess piece for Alabama moving forward.
I totally agree. Let's talk lack of playing time for a couple of guys. Braswell, Lawson, Ricks, didn't see him that much in the football game.
I think Braswell's a little bit of a different situation. I think that's more of a product of, in these types of games, when you go on the road, as a coaching staff, you tend to trust the guys that you can put your trust in, right? So a guy like Deontay Lawson, who doesn't have a ton of experience, he's probably going to step back a little bit, and you're going to get, a lot of contributions from Henry To'oTo'o and another veteran guy who's been around for forever, who's seen a lot of these types of games in Jalen Moody. When you see a guy like, Eli Ricks, his is a little bit of a different story, but I think Alabama had a lot of faith in Will Anderson and Dallas Turner at outside linebacker, and they wanted to kind of utilize those two guys instead of getting Braswell involved. I don't know if that's just the way that things worked out. He played less than 5 snaps, barely saw any action on defense, and I thought maybe we might see some of those packages where you get Anderson, Braswell, and Turner all on the field at the same time. But then I started thinking about it, and it's like their primary goal or focus going into the game was probably to stop the run, which they did very effectively, by the way. Whether it be Roschon Johnson or Bijan Robinson, both of those guys averaged, I think 2.9 or 2.7 yards a carry. And then I think Roschon Johnson was up at like 3.2 or 3.3. And so they stopped the run very effectively. But I also think that came at a cost. And that was them not being able to get a very effective pass rush like they probably should have been. But with Ricks, according to Nick Saban earlier today, he was asked about Ricks, and pretty much Nick Saban was like, hey, if you don't do the things that you need to do in practice to prove that you're ready to play on a Saturday, you're not going to play. And that's kind of, we want our guys to prove that they can do all the little things to where their teammates can trust them. We can trust them. And at LSU, I don't think he probably had that problem. It didn't really matter how he practiced. He was Eli Ricks. He was going to be out there on Saturdays. At a place like Alabama, the culture is completely different. So I think this was a great teaching moment for him. And I think that you'll probably get a lot better practice habits moving forward. But so if I'm a fan, I wouldn't be giving up on him this early. It's something to note. And then that makes sense why you didn't see him at all. You saw the other three guys, but you didn't see Ricks.
Yeah, look, it's a long season, and we know that as well. Eli Ricks, who came over from LSU, trying to find his way on this Crimson Tide depth chart and get in, even though we won't probably ever have a depth chart again, right, Clint?
Yeah, our days with the depth chart's probably done.
Danko, thank you, man. We appreciate the super chat, and we appreciate you being here with us and all of you guys as well. But Danko, shout out to you, man. Love the $20 super sticker, man. That goes a long way for all the stuff that we're doing here. And we can't tell you thank you enough. Guys, as you hang out with us, like and subscribe, give us a thumbs up. That's a way of saying roll tide. Hit the bell so you know that when we're live, we got shows live, you'll get a notification. And, whether it be your phone or your television or your iPad, that you'll be able to kind of swing over and check out everything we got going on, covering the Crimson Tide like none other here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Hey, and don't forget, too, BamaInsider.com. Now it's part of On3. $1 for an entire year of Bama On3, BamaInsider.com. So find that out. You get all the recruiting with our next guest, Joseph Hastings and Andrew Bone. You got Clint here and Jimmy Stein and the message boards. Anything Alabama, we got it for you there. And our show is brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. Great place to come visit, westgateal.com. All right, Clint, should fans be concerned about that pass rush that we saw on Saturday? No sacks last week. They obviously had a really big sack, but a guy named Auburn kicked the field goal anyway, right? Thank God Alabama came back and won by a point, right? You wouldn't want to lose to a guy named Burnt Auburn. But still, the pass rush not producing a lot right now. Sacks anyway.
I think that's been one of the big storylines because I thought that was the one thing Alabama could completely rely on. That, no matter what else was going on, what the other struggles, whether it be at corner, we had the question marks about corner coming in, but we thought that the pass rush would be able to mask any issues that they might possibly have early in the season. So far, it hadn't been that way. Have they had good moments? Yes. Did they have 3 sacks against Texas? Yes, but one of those sacks came from Jalen Moody and another came from Kool-Aid McKinstry. So only one came from that dynamic duo, or really trio. But, obviously if you're getting less than 5 snaps like Chris Braswell, you can't put too much on his shoulders as far as a lack of pass rush against, Texas. But what's interesting is that it kind of – I don't know how it just seemed like Alabama kind of went into this game in a very similar fashion to how Georgia approached the SEC championship last year. And this is something that, as you start to look at it, I was talking earlier about this today with Jake Crane of Crane & Company, and, he brought up this point, and it is very interesting because if you think about it, Alabama going in to the SEC championship, Georgia thought with their offensive line and the struggles that it had throughout the entire season, including that Iron Bowl the week before, they thought they were going to be able to have their way with their offensive line, that they wouldn't have to be super creative and with their blitz packages and bringing pressure from different areas. They get into the game and they figure out they were very wrong. The offensive line stepped up to the plate. They performed really well. They exceeded expectations. And Georgia on the fly, it's very tough to adjust. Like, you try to make halftime adjustments, but your game plan in a lot of ways is your game plan. And I think in a lot of ways, when Alabama, with this dynamic pass rush that we were all talking about all week, we've been talking about it all offseason, really. You look at Texas's offensive line, 2 true freshmen, 1 sophomore. You got a redshirt freshman quarterback. It's like Alabama's probably going to feast on this offensive line. They probably didn't think that they needed to get super creative, and they probably shouldn't have, had to. But at the same time, the offensive line played better than a lot of people, expected. And I think that Alabama was taken, back by that a little bit too. And then just on the fly, you really haven't prepared for anything other than your, basic packages and what you were expecting to be able to win with. And they couldn't win with those guys in a lot of instances. A lot of, of that is masked by Sark and the way that he called the game. But then also, I just think it was guys not having great performances as well. So I don't think it's overly concerning, moving forward. This pass, Will Anderson didn't forget how to pass rush, get to the quarterback. Dallas Turner is the same guy that got 8.5 sacks in the last 7 games last year. Chris Braswell is this guy that the coaching staff has been talking about. I just think they got to get back to the drawing board and get more maybe creative in how they utilize some of those guys and see what ends up happening from there. But I understand fans' frustrations with the pass rush because, like I said, it was supposed to be super dominant, but it's only game 2, and I think it's going to be just fine.
All right, final question for you here on Monday Night Quarterback with recruiting talk coming up next with Joseph Hastings. Offensive line, it's gotten a lot of criticism. I don't know enough about watching the offensive line to sit there and diagram how much help they didn't get from the running backs or from the tight ends or from the quarterback. Who knows, right? You watch a game with Mike Johnson and what you think you see sometimes isn't really what's going on, right? I mean, he played in the NFL and he's one of the great offensive linemen ever. So I try to preference that because it just, from my view, didn't look like it went too well. What do you think their status was and where do they go from here?
I do think that you're correct. I don't think they had a great performance. I don't think it was as bad as some people made it out to be. And we talked about this a little bit in the post-game show. I think that Bryce Young a couple of times held on to the football a little bit too long. Now, why did he hold on to the football? Because the receivers struggled a little bit to get separation. There was nowhere to go with the football. He probably should have tried to do something, maybe get rid of it, but that's not always, an available option. It was also, like I said, Jahmyr Gibbs in pass protection wasn't good at all. There were several miscues that led to pressure or, in certain cases, QB hits or sacks. Jace McClellan, when he was back there, I even saw him, screw up 1 or 2 times, at least one time off the top of my head. So I just think that it was more of a collective effort. I don't think that Bill O'Brien really helped things too much. And people's talked about this a lot, but, we'll continue to reiterate it because it's such an important point. When you are allowing the play clock to get so deep, you've got 3 or 4 seconds to snap the football. That's such a different approach for a defensive lineman because he's able to know exactly when you're going to snap the football, anticipate that. There's no anticipation to it. He knows exactly when it's going to happen, and that gives him an advantage. When you're trying to help out an offensive line like Alabama's got right now and give them as much help as possible, you don't want to do things like waiting until the last second to snap the football because you're putting them in an even bigger disadvantage. You're eliminating an advantage that they have, which is knowing when the ball's supposed to be snapped. The defensive lineman doesn't. He's got to react to you. But when he knows and you both know, now you've even the playing field. And so I think that Bill O'Brien and the coaching staff is kind of doing them a disservice doing that a little bit as well. But there are some issues that need to be resolved. When you look at Darian Dalcourt, the combination of Darian Dalcourt and Kendall Randolph, we went into this year thinking, okay, last year teams could look at Chris Owens there at right tackle, and they could say, okay, I'm fairly certain we can get consistent pressure on Bryce Young through this way. If we can't get it anywhere else, we can get it here. Going into this year, even though you lost Evan Neal, my big argument for why things would improve with the offensive line is there was no place where you could look and say, this is where we're going to attack and get consistent pressure. That was, back when we all thought Javion Cohen was going to be the starter. Now you've got Kendall Randolph. I don't think that Darian Dalcourt is a great pass protector. I think he's a much more effective, better run blocker. And so I think that combination is a place that defenses know they can attack and exploit and get consistent pressure. So I think something's got to be done about that. I don't know if it's Javion Cohen. The way Nick Saban talked about it, he pretty much made it known that Cohen is considered a starter. And so we'll see if, what happens at that left guard competition. But between him and between center, they've got to do something because, Bryce Young can't continue to be under pressure like he was on Saturday.
At Clint R. Lamb on Twitter. He's a great follow on Twitter, and you can always check his work out at BamaInsider.com. Clint, awesome, man. Thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you throughout the week.
Absolutely. Good talking to you, Mick. See you soon, buddy.
Great job. Clint Lamb, always a great job as we talk Alabama. Before I bring on Joseph Hastings, let me remind all of you guys that the show is brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums right there next to Bryant-Denny Stadium. I'm talking about a stone's throw away, a street away. You can sit on the Skygate Club on the roof, and you can look right into Bryant-Denny Stadium, at least into the concession stands areas in the upper deck. It's fantastic. You feel Tuscaloosa from there. You can see from the roof maybe from your oversized balcony, the Strip, or the stadium, or the Walk of Champions, or Denny Chimes, maybe all of it, downtown Tuscaloosa campus. Find out for yourself, westgateal.com, whether you're looking for a 1 to 5 bedroom unit, 900 to 3,000 square feet, you maybe want a real estate investment, maybe somewhere to live, or you just want to come to town and you want to do it the right way, westgateal.com. Coming up, we're going to talk recruiting with one of the best guys out there beating the pavement right now is Joseph Hastings. And let's find out where he was this past. It's always great to talk to Joseph Hastings, part of our team here with the On 3 crew, Bama Insider. Make sure you like and subscribe. Give us a thumbs up as you hang out with us on Monday Night Quarterback, brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums, as you know. Joseph, you had a big weekend over in Texas, the Lone Star State. You were there for Alabama and Texas, but you were looking at some of the top recruits that Alabama has committed, some guys that they're looking for right now. How was Texas, and what'd you see there?
Yeah, Texas was great. You know, I always love going to the Lone Star State. My trip was pretty short-lived. I got to go to Dallas on Thursday afternoon, and I left on Saturday morning. But, you know, in my time there, I got to speak with a trio of Alabama targets, one of whom is already committed to another program, in Malik Muhammad. I got to speak with the Texas commit on Thursday afternoon after his practice. And, you know, he told me a lot in as it pertains to the Crimson Tide's pursuit of him, including the fact that he is going to take an official visit to Alabama. He's in touch with Travaris Robinson multiple times per week. Robinson is also in touch with his father as well. You know, the Crimson Tide are doing a really good job here. You know, they finished second in his recruitment behind Texas on July 20th, and they're making a strong push despite him being committed. Cormani McClain, Sharif Denson, those are two of the other cornerbacks that Alabama really has on their radar right now. But Malik Muhammad definitely is one to pay attention to. And then kind of switching over on Friday to Longview versus Tyler Legacy, I got to see Jalen Hale and Jordan Renaud, two top 70 overall targets for the Crimson Tide. They played against each other on Friday night. And, you know, it was really interesting to see both of them in action for the first time. Jalen Hale is listed at 6'1" on his On 3 profile, but he looks to be about 6'3", has really good length and range when catching the football. Couldn't see much of him actually in the game because Longview won 69-0. They had a couple of defensive touchdowns. He didn't play at all in the second half, but in warmups, you can just kind of see the potential that's there with him and his ability to high point the football, his long strides, which generates a lot of speed for him. He's a downfield threat for sure. So I liked what I saw from Hale in limited action. And then Jordan Renaud, you know, Mick, we've talked about the commits and targets that I've seen thus far on the road, and I would have to say that Renaud probably turned in the best performance I've seen thus far. You know, listed at 6'3.5", 245 pounds, comparable to Will Anderson in terms of, height, weight, just the way that they look. I think Will may be just a little bit longer than him, but Renaud was absolutely dominant on Friday night despite the loss. Absolutely wreaking havoc in the trenches and mixing up the power, speed. I really like the strength that he showcased, being able to engage with offensive linemen and drive them back by turning his legs and just overpowering them, pushing them backwards to the quarterback and the ball carrier. I really liked what I saw from Renaud and you know, along with his bend, his twitch, his flexibility. Just a really good athlete. I think he should be in contention for rising up to top 50, top 40 status. I came away really impressed by what I saw. And, you know, Hale and Renaud are going to be committing here in less than 9 days. Hale on September 21st and Renaud 2 days earlier on September 19th. And Alabama is right in the thick of things with both of them.
Joseph Hastings from Bama on 3, BamaInsider.com. You can join right now and you get all the recruiting information with him and, of course, Andrew Bone and everything going on in the world of the Crimson Tide as far as this number one recruiting class is concerned. Joseph and Bone have you covered, and we always talk to Joseph here on Monday Night Quarterback. What was the atmosphere like at Texas's high school football games that you were at? I've heard all these stories about how amazing it is. You know, they did that TV show where they talk, what was it called? Friday Night Lights, it was a movie, and then the TV show was all about Texas football. Did you get that feel compared to Florida and Alabama that it was any different?
It's incredible. This isn't my first time going to Texas. It is my first time seeing a game there, but just you look at the stadiums that they play in, and they're like college football stadiums. What you would see from college level programs. There was a ton of people there on both sides. I had previously gone to a Berkeley Prep game to see Keon Keeley, and this was about 1/100th, the attendance. It felt like it. We were playing in an actual stadium, and the atmosphere was electric from start to finish. Even when Tyler Legacy was losing 62-0, 69-0, there were fans still cheering and supporting their kids. So you can really tell, like, Texas really revolves around football. Is just such a big part of Texas, and you can tell with the atmosphere there, the culture, everything. They really value those Friday nights, and I'm so glad that I got to be a part of it and witness all of it, even in a game that ended pretty early.
So the guys that Alabama is in on right now, what are your thoughts on the standing with each of these guys? And I mean, would Alabama and Texas's game Saturday affect that at all? Alabama won the game, but Texas, a moral victory. We'll see how that plays out at the end of the season. But right now, feels like Texas is the team with all the momentum. In wrestling, Joseph, we call that getting over, right? They got over. Like, they didn't win, but they almost won. They were that close. And then they go into the poll, and Alabama falls from first to second.
Which is an interesting thing, in my opinion, because, Texas loses. They go to number 21, which shows that the AP poll has respect for them. But Alabama gets knocked for going on the road and defeating a now top 25 team in a hostile environment. I thought that was kind of interesting. I know some people were saying, they should be 4 or number 5. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, Alabama won. Alabama came out on top. They did what they needed to do. They won. But people are going to, make their own assumptions about the poll and where Bama should stand. But we'll see going forward. As for your point about the recruiting side of things and the players that Alabama's in the mix for, Jordan Renaud took an official visit to Oklahoma this past weekend. I've been feeling confident about Alabama. I've told you this, over our appearances on the show here. And I've continued to reiterate that Alabama is the school to beat. I have my prediction in there. There's always some nerves about Oklahoma, especially with them getting the last official visit. But I think the Crimson Tide are still the team to watch out for come September 19th. It's going to come down to Alabama and Oklahoma on that day, but I continue to feel confidence with Nick Saban and company's chances, and it would be a huge win for Freddie Roach, adding Renaud to a defensive line class that features Edric Hill and Hunter Osborne. And then looking over to Hale, that's an interesting one because you talked about how Saturday's game could affect things, and on one hand, look, Alabama didn't show out the way we were expecting them to. I had predicted them to win, by 20 plus points. A lot of people did. That's what the spread had them at, and they won by just 1 point on a late field goal. But then you look at it and say, okay, maybe that knocks Bama. On the other side, you can say to Jalen Hale, look, we need somebody like you. We need a wide receiver who's dynamic and can bring the caliber of talent that you bring to the table. And, Hale probably sees that and is like, okay, maybe I can earn some early playing time at Alabama the way Kobe Prentice is doing. So it's interesting. The RPM on the right side of your screen reflects a very close race. I think that's where it's at. I hear Alabama. I hear Texas. I'm not ready to make an official prediction just yet, but maybe Saturday's outcome determines it one way or the other. We'll see. Hale has an official visit to Texas A&M coming up this weekend. I don't believe the Aggies are really in the mix there. Georgia's also a finalist for him, but this one's coming down to Alabama and Texas. And then as for Malik Muhammad, look, he's committed to Texas right now, but the fact that Alabama's getting an official visit, he's reciprocating interest, still in contact with the coaching staff, all positive signs there. I would definitely say he's a top flip candidate for Alabama in this class, along with Centarian Perkins, who's committed to Ole Miss. And then also Kelby Collins and Peter Woods, those are kind of the prospects we're paying attention to. But Muhammad told me, he said, if you get on the field and you produce at Alabama, there's a 99.9% chance you're going to be drafted in the first round or be a high draft pick. So he knows the development and tradition that comes with Alabama and told Travaris Robinson, he said the pressure is on Alabama to flip him, but he also told Texas the pressure is on you all to keep me. So I think that's going to be an interesting one to pay attention to down the line.
Yeah, very interesting. And what a weird weekend in the state of Texas for football. It wasn't just that, Alabama played a close game with Texas, but Texas A&M lost a game that you would figure they were going to win, right? They lost to Appy State. Appy State almost beat North Carolina, so they're not a bad team, but Texas A&M is supposed to be like a top 10, top 5 program. Obviously, that not really what we're seeing out of them. And it was just kind of that world over the weekend as far as some games go, a lot of upsets, but Alabama not one of them. He's Joseph Hastings. I'm Mick Gillispie. It's Monday Night Quarterback right here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, hit the bell. That's when you know we're live. Join Bama Insider on $1, 12 months. Be a part of that right now. Get all the basics, get all the really deep dive stuff, get everything with Alabama recruiting with Joseph and Andrew Bone at BamaInsider.com. $1 for 12 months. All right. Most important remaining recruiting battle right now for Alabama.
That's a good question. I think I'm going to go with Keon Keeley. You talk about the teams that are in the mix for him, Ohio State, the Florida Gators. Those are two programs that played host to him the first 2 weekends of the month. Alabama would love to get a dynamic edge jack position player that Keon Keeley is. 6'6", 245 pounds. He's a long prospect. He's got a ton of potential. He has the power to go along with that length. Seems to play pretty well in coverage, even though I didn't get to see him too much there, but he moves well for his size. Very dynamic on the outside in terms of getting to the quarterback. I mainly saw him with his hands in the dirt a couple of weeks ago, but this is a game-changing prospect, and there's a reason that On3 has him listed as the number 3 overall player in this class. I think he would be just a massive addition for the Crimson Tide, and to win one over Florida, which beat them out for Kelby Collins, to win one over Ohio State, which is a program they're continuing to be in head-to-head battles with. You think of Caleb Downs in this class. You think of Justice Haynes. They lost the battle with Brandon Ennis, the 5-star wide receiver out of South Florida. So you look at those battles that Alabama continues to find themselves in with Florida and Ohio State, and you say, look, you got to win those, like you got to win those with Georgia, like you got to win those with Auburn. And that's the type of program that you have to beat for these caliber of recruits. So I would say that Keon is the number one. That people will say James Smith, Quay Rousseau, Montgomery, in-state prospects out of Carver High School as the two most important remaining ones. You wouldn't have an argument from me there either. Others will say that actually the most important one is keeping some of those commits, like a Tony Mitchell, who's taking a visit to Texas A&M this weekend, Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes, who are both still being pursued heavily by Ohio State and Georgia and others. So, honestly, there's a ton of options to choose from here, but I would go with Keon just because of the caliber of player he is and the programs that Alabama is facing off with to land his commitment.
All right, before you get out of here tonight, what's up next for you? Last week, you gave us the breakdown of your visit to Texas. Where are you going to be and who are you looking at next?
Yes, so tomorrow I'm hoping to go see Cormani McLean, 5-star plus prospect out of Lakeland, Florida. Really hoping that I can catch up with him and talk a little bit more in depth about Alabama. The last time we spoke was at the UA Future 50 media session at IMG Academy a couple of months ago. Obviously, a lot has changed, so I'm hoping to catch up with him. And then also Damon Wilson out of Venice High School. You talk about the edge prospects that Alabama's after, and Quay Rousseau and Keon Keeley. We mentioned them before. Damon Wilson's another one. We have him on 3 listed as a 5-star prospect and a number 4 player overall right behind Keeley. So he's a very versatile player, and I'm hoping to see him and St. Francis Academy quarterback Michael Van Buren. St. Francis is facing off against Venice. I'm hoping to see those two go up against each other. Van Buren is the 2024 quarterback target for Alabama in the next cycle. So those are 2 prospects I'm going to be seeing, along with Cormani McLean. I'm in Gainesville, Florida right now, so there's a target for the Crimson Tide by the name of Jaron Hamilton at Buchholz High School. I'm probably going to attend this practice on Wednesday. So, Mick, to sum it up, I'm going to be pretty busy this week, but I love doing it. I love going on the road. I love talking with these kids in person. I really value those kind of in-person relationship building that, happens when you go see them at games and practices. So very excited for the content I'm bringing to BamaInsider.com, and also just the overall content that Clint Lamb, Andrew Bone, Jimmy Stein are bringing. We're building an awesome community, and we'd love for you all to be a part of it for sure.
Yeah, awesome, man. Well, it's great to have you on the road. Final thing, I guess, just curiosity. Did you watch the game in Texas, and what was everyone's reaction watching that game? That Texas played so well, Alabama played so poorly, and Alabama won.
I wish I could have gone to that game. It was a little bit out of the way for me just because of the high school game being in Tyler. But I flew back to the Sunshine State on Saturday morning. I got my car out of the parking lot at the airport and drove immediately to the nearest Buffalo Wild Wings and tuned in for that game. I watched it start to finish. For some reason, the audio was playing the Ohio State-Arkansas State game, so I didn't get to hear, the crowd at Texas there. But I spoke with a couple of people who were in attendance, and they said it was probably one of the best atmospheres they've ever been in. That obviously made us a strong impression on recruits, and it also goes to show how well Alabama can do in those type of environments. So, I'm hoping to be at one of the games this upcoming season. We'll see about that. Maybe the Texas A&M game, but Alabama, that's what they're used to. They're used to playing in those type of environments, and Nick Saban gets his guys ready every time.
All right, great stuff from Joseph Hastings. Joseph A. Hastings on Twitter. Follow him. He's got all the latest information when it comes to Alabama and recruiting, and we have it for you here on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. Coming up, we've got Jimmy Stein. He's going to talk to you all about everything that happened with the Crimson Tide. Let's go to Jimmy now. Is Jimmy Stein. I'm gone. I'm back again. Hey, look at you over there, back from Texas. Let me remind everyone that the show is brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Like, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, hit the bell as we hang out with you on Monday Night Quarterback. You survived.
I came back a little sunburned, a little sun-whipped. Alabama won. They defeated Texas. Jimmy lost to the Sun.
Well, Jimmy, I just can't believe Alabama didn't cover a 20-point spread, and how dare they not go in there and absolutely wipe out Texas?
Hey, winning on the road is hard. I say all the time. Saban hasn't spoiled Alabama fans. He's ruined them. And one of the ways in which we're ruined is Alabama fans believe that beating good teams on the road by 3 touchdowns is just something you can just roll out of bed and do. And hey, it just doesn't always work out that way. But really, the team showed a lot to me in terms of maintaining their poise. There were several times in the game and almost could have got away from them a little bit, but defensively played really well. There are some concerns. We'll touch on them here, but defensively played really well. Alabama's only given up 1 touchdown in 8 quarters, Mick. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah, you're going to win some games. You're going to win some games giving up 1 touchdown in 8 quarters.
Guys, love seeing you in the comment section. Jersey Dolphins, welcome to the show tonight. Good to see you. Jarvis, always great stuff. Easy Money's in there. Hey, everyone, Roll Tide. Jimmy Stein, I'm Mick Gillispie on the Bama Insider YouTube channel. All right, let's get into some positives. You want to do positives or concerns first?
No, let's do positives. That's always my favorite thing to talk about.
All right, so if someone says to you, Jimmy, they say, give me the good news or give me the bad news, you're going to go good news first, bad news second, right? So let's go good news.
I want to be in a good mood when you go over the bad news.
When you get the bad news?
Right.
Okay, well, the good news is that Bryce Young did it again. And people got to remember, this guy has a knack for bringing a team back in a hostile environment at the end of the game when you're really down to your last strike. Did it again.
You always feel like evaluating NFL quarterbacks, Mick, like who are the best quarterbacks in the NFL, where they play the best football in the world. I think the best guys are the ones that thrive in the 2-minute offense. The guys that have total control of the field and the offense in the final 2 minutes with the game on the line. And you know what? Bryce is so good at that. I'm not sure Alabama's ever had anyone any better than Bryce when it comes to maintaining poise, keeping everyone calm, and then achieving what amounts to the impossible. It wasn't quite as desperate as the Auburn situation, because there was a little more time left and the field position wasn't quite as bad when Alabama took over the ball. But less than a minute and a half, no timeouts. I wouldn't necessarily say the season was on the line, but in some ways it was. And then all he did is go out and, probably put together, the best drive he had all day long. The receiver stepped up too. Offensive line gave him some time. He did have to spin out of a blitz. It made the biggest play on that drive, I think, was when he spun out of the tackle on the Texas blitz. But boy, Bryce Young was another MVP performance, another huge thing on his resume. The whole country was watching. That was a very heavily watched game, as we saw some numbers today. And I assure you, all 32 NFL teams were watching. So yeah, Bryce was a huge bright spot. Along to go with the defense, which the entirety of the defense really gave up one touchdown in 4 quarters in a hostile environment. That's one touchdown they've given up in 8 quarters. They only gave up about 370 yards. That's not a lot in 2022. Yes, Texas did drive the field, got 4 field goals. But in the end, holding Texas to 19 on their home field and 1 touchdown, that's a really good performance by the defense. Had the defense not done that and forced the offense to come up with 30-something to win the game, it just wouldn't happen. I mean, Alabama doesn't win this game without that defensive performance. So the defense playing well. Bryce still is Bryce Young. Those were certainly the positives for me, Mick. And Will Reichard, who I think almost put an exclamation point on his case that he's the best kicker in school history.
Yeah. Look, I was talking to Jay Barker about this. We remember the days of Michael Proctor and the Tiffins, dad and son, were both really good. But this guy, I mean, you never worry about it. I mean, really, he's literally the Justin Tucker of college football.
Yeah, I like that comp, actually. Kicking is easier to evaluate than other positions because there's only really one number. I mean, let's be numbers. But here's what's funny. People remember big moments, and that's great. That's great. Van Tiffin, the old man Tiffin, he probably had the best moment of all of them, right? I mean, a 50-yard field goal, a 50-plus to beat Auburn in the final second and complete a comeback. That was the big moment. But if you look at Van Tiffin's numbers, how many makes? What's his make percentage? Way lower than Will Reichard. And Van Tiffin did it with the tee and wider goalposts. So, I think sometimes fans have fond memories of kickers because of the big moments like Van had against Auburn. But when you look at make percentage, what's the percentage of kicks made? Will Reichard's numbers are better than anyone in Alabama's history, with the possible exception of maybe younger Tiffin, Lee Tiffin, who was a first-team All-American in 2009, had an incredible make percentage in his career. I think Reichard has a little bigger leg and is more likely to kick in the NFL. As we know, Lee Tiffin didn't have any NFL success, but Reichard is likely to find some. He's extremely dependable, which is exactly what you're looking for.
Not to get into too much more about kickers. I mean, I've got a bunch of other stuff here, but what was the guy's name? Christensen. He made that kick to beat Philip Fulmer in Tennessee. That was the loudest. Jamie Christensen.
Yeah. Jamie Christensen. Yeah. Good player.
Money. Yeah.
Good
loudest
player.
I remember the stadium was when he beat Philip Fulmer with that field goal at the end of the game.
Hey, Alabama's had several good kickers. It's funny, and there's a running jokes for a long time on social media to pretend like Alabama's never had a good kicker until Reichard shows. That's not really true. You've already mentioned a couple. Proctor was really good. Philip Doyle was really good. Both Tiffins were really good. Adam Griffith, his numbers are better than anyone remembers. But Will Reichard is the best I've ever seen at Alabama.
I agree. And there's been a lot of bad ones too. There's been a lot more bad ones than good ones.
That is true.
I mean, how many people had to wear their lucky shirt every time Alabama tried to kick and then, end up having to find a new lucky shirt, maybe before Saban showed up. All right, let's talk about the concerns. Obviously, it's not kicking. Lack of a run game and lack of playmaking outside, wide receivers, maybe the offensive line. What do you think?
Yeah, defense has been fine. I just don't even really have any defensive concerns at this point. I think the defense as a whole is fine. We know Bryce is good. I think basically everything else on offense is up for debate. Mm-hmm. Jury's still out, however you want to put it. To me, the number one concern for me personally, Mick, is the failure in 2 games to establish a run game. There's been some big plays. McClellan's 81-yard touchdown run was outstanding. Bryce ran for 100 yards in the first game, but those weren't designed runs. Those were all scrambles. Alabama has just failed to build a consistent run game. And without that, everything else around it is likely to fail, including the pass game. The defense has to respect the run game, or it'll be easier for them to defend the pass. And it's all, what you can call a symbiotic relationship too. And until Alabama has some playmakers outside, until the defense is concerned about Alabama having a wide receiver that makes big plays, then they can overplay the run because they're not worried about what's outside. But really, it's those two things in concert. But I would start with the run game. And why isn't the run game working? Frankly, I think it's all of it. Not getting a good enough push from the offensive line, backs not hitting the hole, not enough playmaking outside to loosen things up for those guys. It's not all on one thing to me, Mick. I think it's everything. And these next 2 games are an excellent opportunity for Alabama to get back to the drawing board and find a run game. Because I think we know Jahmyr Gibbs, Jace McClellan, Roydell Williams, and Trey Sanders are all good players. And Alabama shouldn't struggle in the run game. I get it that they don't have a 225-pound back like B-Rob or like Najee Harris, and they got to do it a little differently. But it should be productive. And I think that's task number 1 for Nick Saban and his staff this week against Monroe.
Yeah, how about this? Alabama falls from number 1 to number 2 with a win in a really tough environment, right? So no respect for Texas. But then Texas goes from not being ranked to being ranked in the top 25 with a loss. Makes no sense to me.
Welcome to Alabama's world. I mean, where things can be crazy. It's like, wait a minute, Texas played with Alabama. They must be one of the best teams in the country. Look, Alabama only won by 1 point on the road. They must not be the best team. When in fact, I don't know, what would it, Georgia moved up to number 1 because they beat Samford 33-0. I sort of like Alabama's chances to beat Samford 33-0 or worse. I mean, frankly, I thought it was a good thing in the sense that Nick Saban's always looking for an edge. He's always looking for motivation. I think seeing Alabama fall out of that number 1 spot made Nick Saban happy. And if he's happy, we should all be.
Yeah, no doubt. I kind of feel the same way too. It really is meaningless other than just kind of the perspective of how everything goes in the world of perceptions. Look, Alabama dominated against Utah State. 1 week, they were a team that no one could touch. They were the greatest team to ever play. Even Utah State's coach, Blake Anderson, said, hey, in 30 years, I've never seen a team this good. Now this week, everyone's just surprised that they walked out of there with a win, and they're not going to ever beat anyone. They're going to lose all these road games coming up. It is crazy. I do want to ask you this, though, having been there, how hot was it, and what was the experience like, the fan experience like being in Texas?
It was really cool. I really enjoyed. That was my first trip to Austin. The first time watching a game in that stadium. There's an historical part to it that's really cool. Texas has a really cool history. There's an extremely large, passionate fan base. The fans were all very welcoming. I made jokes with a few though about how, early on when Texas A&M joined the SEC in 2012, 2013, it was sort of friendly back then too. It was all, hey, we got somebody new in the league. Hey, nice to meet you. Good to meet you. Hey, y'all got a great place. Hey, y'all got a great place. Hey, y'all have cool traditions. Hey, y'all do too. And now fast forward 8 or 9 years and Alabama and Texas A&M aren't talking to each other. I mean, really,
yeah,
because
right.
What happens when you play every year, you develop a rivalry and then that develops some hard feelings. So we're joking with Texas fans that, hey, everybody was sort of brothers this weekend. Let's see if we both feel the same way 10 years from now.
Yeah, buddy Tom Abraham said that he thinks this is going to be one of Alabama's biggest rivalries here in the next 10 years. And I tend to think that. And after this game, I really believe that.
Yeah, I can see that. And again, they have cool traditions. It's a cool stadium. They certainly have a good team. And I, for all the Alabama fans that think of Texas as they've struggled for a long time, they were 5-7. look, Texas has some dudes. I mean, they this whole 10 years while they're wandering in the wilderness, they weren't signing 2 stars, Mick. They weren't even signing many 3 stars. I mean, I think their problem has really been development of the talent, maybe not necessarily choosing the right guys. Well, Sark studied it at the feet of the best, not just Nick Saban, but Pete Carroll too.
Right.
And I think Sark is an excellent head coach. He also had a great plan for Alabama. I mean, who knows us better? Who knows Bryce better than Sark? Only Bill O'Brien knows Bryce better than Steve Sarkisian, who coached Bryce his freshman year, recruited him out of high school. Not a lot of people know this or realize this, but Bryce was high school teammates with Sarkisian's son, out at Modern Day. So Sark's known Bryce for years, knows his game, knows how his mind works. I bet Sark poked his head in a few defensive meetings and said, hey, you want to confuse Bryce? Do this, and that. He struggles with it. Only Sark would know that. So, hey, that was a tough matchup for Alabama. And I think as the season plays out, Mick, we'll see that Texas team is a little better than everyone was assuming going into the year.
Well, and they're fresh right now too. I mean, look, it's also when you play someone, right? I mean, this is early in the season. They spent the entire offseason game planning for Alabama. I mean, they everyone's healthy, and obviously that didn't last long, but they were going into the football game, right? And I felt like, and I said this earlier, that every single advantage you could give Texas, they had. The time was weird for Alabama. They don't play at 11 a.m. The temperature was way hotter than any time that you would normally play. You're in a hostile environment. They wouldn't even let our band come in, which is crazy. I mean, they had to bring their own air condition. The officiating was Big 12. I mean, and it was a lot of circumstances outside of the norm that they had to contend with, and they won the football game. But my last question to you is, is this: looking at the road schedule this year, I've said I think this is the toughest road schedule Alabama's had since Nick Saban's been here. I mean, just look at all these different tough games. They're going to be at Arkansas. They're going to be at Tennessee. They're going to be at LSU. That's going to be a tough game. And they're going to be at Ole Miss with this one included. You tell me a year when Alabama played a tougher road schedule.
Yeah, and I would actually today, it's too early in the season to be emphatic, but today, based on what we've seen so far, I think that Texas game is tougher than at Ole Miss and at LSU, who have both had their struggles. I mean, Ole Miss isn't even sure who's going to start at quarterback this upcoming game number 3. We all saw what LSU did against Florida State, in week 1. I would rate Texas as the 3rd toughest road game on what is a pretty brutal road schedule. And, I'm big on Arkansas this year. I really am. And I think, Mick, this game at Arkansas is one of the toughest road games Alabama's played in a long time. That's going to be a really tough environment. That's a very good team, and I don't want to be ominous, and I don't want to be Mr. Negative, but I'm just calling it like I see it. If Alabama plays offensively like they did Saturday against Texas, they will not beat Arkansas. Mm-hmm. That would be a loss. You have to improve and find a run game before you get to Fayetteville, or that will be a loss.
Yeah, look, I feel like if they overlook a team on this schedule, there's going to be losses.
Yes.
If they beat up on Texas A&M and then go to Tennessee and they're not ready, they could lose that game. They could lose that. They could lose to Mississippi State at home, although I don't think they're going to be challenged much in Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's the games on the road where the entire world is against you. It's loud, and these teams are good that when I look at it, and all these teams except LSU are ranked, and that's LSU, Alabama. They're going to show up for that game. They played Alabama last year to a touchdown. So this is a good team. This is a tough road schedule.
They are. It would be really tough for anyone to go down to Baton Rouge and win. They won't play like they did against Florida State in that neutral site, or somewhat of a neutral site. Right. No, the game at Arkansas and at Tennessee, brutal.
Yep.
Brutal. It'd be brutal for Georgia. It'd be brutal for Ohio State. Those are two really tough road opponents. And frankly, in my mind, boiling it just down to 2 isn't fair. But I think those 2 games at Arkansas and at Tennessee are sort of going to tell us how the season works out for Alabama and whether Alabama will be in the postseason.
Yep, that's exactly it. All right, anything else, Jimmy?
No, just obviously there is a lot to talk about on the Talk of Champions message board. There's been a lot of negativity. There's been a lot of positivity. What I want to focus on is answers. What you guys answers? What do y'all think needs to be done? And these are fun conversations for me, because here's what I like about those conversations, Mick, is those same conversations are happening in the staff room. At Alabama Sunday and Monday, it's what are we going to do from here? That's their conversations that they're having. So we should have our own conversations, and we do it every day on the Talk of Champions message board on BamaInsider.
Awesome. Well, he's Jimmy Stein. We've had a great show for you guys tonight. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit the thumbs up as you hung out with us tonight here on the BamaInsider YouTube channel. Hit the bell so you know when we're live. And the show is always brought to you by Westgate Luxury Condominiums. Next time you come to town, WestgateAL.com. Looking for real estate in Tuscaloosa, WestgateAL.com. You're at the football game and you look out to the right and you see that building right there next to it, that beautiful condominium. That's Westgate Luxury Condominiums, and you can find out about 1 to 5 bedroom units, 900 to 3,000 square feet, the oversized balconies, the amazing kitchens, the great parking, right conveniently located next to the Walk of Champions, next to the statues of those great championship-winning coaches, next to the stadium, right there by the Strip. By Bryant-Denny Stadium and Denny Chimes and campus and all that stuff, WestgateAL.com. Great work behind the scenes, Chris Daughtry. And for, again, Clint Lamb, who came on bringing the fire tonight, and Joseph Hastings, and all of you guys that have been in the comment section making it a fun night, and Kyle Henderson and Chris Daughtry and everyone else. I'm Mick Gillispie. Thanks for watching. We'll do it again next Monday at 7 o'clock. Roll Tide.